Welcome back to another episode of Allsouthangler. And I've got to admit, today is one I'm very excited about. I'm excited to share this presentation. I'm excited to share this setup because I have been slaying fish with it since I kind of nailed it down and went through the evolution of it, I guess so to say. In the beginning, let me go ahead and give a shout out to DB, Deceiver Bob, on this one. It was a lot of back and forth conversation on him and a presentation that I wanted and soundboarding off of him, and I wouldn't have this presentation if it wasn't for Bob. And when I tell you it catches everything, I mean from 6-inch croaker all the way up to, I want to say I caught about a 20-something pound drum on this presentation, and I think the biggest redfish is around 9 pounds. And a couple of decent trout. The smaller trout really seem to love it, but we're talking on a light wire 1/0 hook here, so you really need to know how to play a fish on this presentation, or I wouldn't say know how to play a fish, but set your drag well and be ready to play that fish, I guess is the best way I know to put it. So let's get this camera moved and get to it. All right, guys, if I had a secret weapon, this is it. I mean, this thing has produced for me since I've been throwing it. It is a hammer. What we have here is a Owner 1/0 rigging hook, the cutting point hook, super sharp hook. I want to say these are the Offshore Angler, whatever that Bass Pro Shops brand is they sell a lot. #1 split ring. It and just a few other ones will actually advertise their #1 split ring as being a 15-pound test split ring. A lot of the rest of them are 10s. I do believe they are a little stronger after doing some testing on them. We have a wired bell sinker here. Now this bell sinker, I don't know exactly what you would call this one, that differs a little from the ones that you see predominantly in the stores, where it is a twisted wire that terminates and the wire goes all the way through and out the bottom of the bell sinker and is braided. Those seem to catch a lot more grass, where these lower profile and slicker ones here, they really seem, the grass rolls off of them a little bit better. And all of that, you terminate your split ring to your bell sinker and then put it on the hook. Now if you look closely on these hooks here, you'll notice there's a little black bump right there on them, and a mono bait keeper. I put those on there. I really think it increases the durability of the presentation, you know, the fishability of it, how long my lures last. And that is just done with my fly fishing equipment. And what I do is just take a piece of 20-pound test Mason hard mono and some black thread and wrap that dude on there and put some UV epoxy on it. And that really helps. And whenever you tie this lure, what you want to do is tie to the front of the split ring here, in between the bell sinker and the hook, and that will allow this hook to articulate while the bell sinker is on bottom, which is important. All right, so let's look at one that's rigged here. All right, this is rigged with a Z-Man TRD crawls. It's a 2.5-inch Allsouthangler crawl, very durable, very durable lure, highly buoyant. It's a high floater, and whenever this sinker hits bottom, it allows this crawfish to float up, and the claws will go straight up in the defensive position, which fish just, they can't stand it. I mean, really, they can't stand it. And what that wire keeper does, you can see it here, laying under the bottom of the plastic. That stops that plastic from riding down this hook and getting all bunched up at the bottom, because sometimes I fish it very aggressively with a hard pop, and it cause it to fall down. And the reason why this plastic, Allsouthangler, is very durable. I mean, it's very durable plastic, right? I mean, I've fished with one for days, just one lure on one rig for days. Usually the plastic doesn't tear up unless something pops the claw off of it. It's usually you lose it before the plastic goes bad. But this plastic here, from what I understand, the guy that started Z-Man Plastic actually got the formula from those little slap hands that used to come out of the gumball machines. I mean, how crazy is that? He went to the guy and said, hey, I want to use your formula for some lures. The guy said, all right, no big deal. Well, Allsouthangler was born just like that. This presentation for me has been the highest, not only the highest producer for me lately, but it has been my highest number day. In other words, I want to say I caught somewhere in the neighborhood of in the mid 60s, maybe peeking into the 70s of redfish in one day. It was a long day from morning till dark just about, but I caught redfish in one spot all day long. And that's what did it. That was the lure that did it. And it's forevermore has a place in my box. So let's talk about rigging this guy up. Now, if you get this lure out, you'll notice that they have these little ribs in it. And what I like to do with this 1/0 rigging hook is bring my hook out even with the back of these fins. These fins are made to look like a crawfish with his tail turned around backwards when he kicks and he flees. And that tail kicks and he flees forward. That's what that's supposed to look like. And I like to bring my hook through it, all right, and come out right behind where those fins start with this 1/0 rigging hook. I'll push it down, and you can be a little aggressive with this plastic, man. I mean, it's really durable. And pull it way forward, and you kind of gotta, you know, play with it a little bit to get that little wire keeper out if that's something you decide to do. And you get that guy out and setting over it. Now the next, once again, if you come out behind those fins, you'll see it likes to lay right in between those claws. All right, so you just get your little bullseye mark there right in between the claws and bring it out the top. Now, some people do pinch their lures back a lot, and I do if I'm fishing in heavy grass or around a lot of wood or something like that, but for the most part, just leaving it a little exposed like that, it being kind of on the slick side, and this articulating so easily, I don't get hung up with this a lot. More often than not, I get hung up with the sinker in rocks or lodged in something, or my line cuts into something and pulls tight. I don't hang my hook in there a lot. So now that we've took a look at the lure, why? You know, I said I had a certain presentation that I wanted, and it was primarily I was looking for a particular presentation for cold water, when the fish get really lethargic, when that water temperature gets down in the, I don't know, below 60 degrees or in the really low 60s or down. I was out on the water fishing, and I used to, and still have a lot of the footage, but I used to have a GoPro that I kept mounted on the front of my center console. And it's a great tool. It's a great tool to see what was I doing when I got that bite. And I honestly, through that, noticed that in general, whenever I would double jig a lure, I got a lot more bites than that single pop. But anyway, so what happened is it was a day where I wasn't catching a lot of fish. I just wasn't. It was really cold. I wasn't getting a lot of bites. I was still kind of feeling my way through the marsh, and it was only my second cold spell to fish. And I'm out with the flashy swimmer, you know, kind of slow rolling it, jigging it slow, and maybe picked up a few fish, but not a lot. And I remember, I think I'd got a phone call or something I seen on the GoPro, and I'd put my rod, but you know, kind of holding it between my legs and stared at my phone, and the boat, you know, kind of gets off station. I wasn't doing what I need to do, so this lure is just dragging slowly along the bottom, just dragging. That's it. All of a sudden, fish on. So I catch this fish. I think it's a fluke. I think it's just, you know, just kind of a coincidence, no big deal, right? Well, I guess I was busy that day. I got a lot of phone calls that day. I was, you know, a lot of text messages or whatever else, and it happened again. And it happened again, you know, I would say within like 30 minutes on this video. And so I caught on, and that's what I did. I started throwing this flashy swimmer out there and dragging it, just, you know, no jigging, no nothing, really slow and stop. Really slow and stop. All right, I was catching fish, and I caught a lot of fish that winter doing that. But I knew there's got to be a better way, because the flashy swimmer, I mean, it's a swim bait with this flash, you know, with this Colorado blade on it. It's made to be steady retrieve or jigged. I mean, its deal is the vibration of this spinner and flash and so on. Well, I'm dragging this thing through the mud. There's got to be something better. And I wanted something that would maybe rise up off the bottom. I really wanted something that would float up off the bottom, something that was more of a finesse tactic, and so on and so forth. And DB turned me on to this Midwest finesse tactic that was really sweeping the nation that a lot of people know about now as the Ned rig. And I went towards the Ned rig baits, and I tried them on a jig head, but honestly, they didn't work well. In our marsh, it's a real muddy bottom. And I, testing, a little R&D kind of up close to the edge of the marsh, pitched this out there, and I noticed that jig head would hit, and it would, however it hit, it would stick, and I would drag it and it would lay down when I would drag it forward, and there wasn't enough buoyancy or leverage to pick the lure back up with the stiction or the friction of the mud, and the jig heads just weren't working that well. Plus, there wasn't that many great weedless Ned rig jig heads at the time like there are now. And I still think that the articulation in this presentation is a big key to it. I mean, it looks fantastic in the water. So whenever you drag this presentation slowly through the mud, it'll lay down, and when you stop, this lure will float up, and it'll move slowly with the current or wave motion or whatever's going on with the water. And then you pull it a little bit slowly, and it's cold water now, and it'll do the same thing. But when fish are more aggressive, like say, this is a favorite of mine to pitch in between bridge pilings. I'll go up to a 15-pound test fluorocarbon, terminated to my, I use Slick 8 Power Pro. I use an 8-turn surgeon's knot, but I'll terminate this to it. I usually go to a 1/4 ounce because I'm in that 7 to 8 foot of water or so, and it's really, really aggressive. Double pop, and then feel that lure as it falls down. Double pop, and feel that lure as it falls down. And usually right before it hits bottom, or it hits bottom, you wait a second. Always wait with this presentation. Just give it a couple of counts, because when it hits bottom, it's going to float back up, and when it settles, they'll hit. Right? So double tap, let it fall, hit bottom. I usually give it about 2 or 3 seconds, and then I'll do it again, unless I notice that I'll double tap it, and then right after the double tap, when it starts to fall is when I'm getting those hits. There's no reason to wait, right? But the pattern could be the weight. A lot of times in colder water, if I'm jigging it really lightly, the pattern is when it hits and it floats up, then you get that hit. That is usually the pattern. But I'm telling, this is a killer presentation for me. Me and Matt Flint, we were fishing Bayou Labatry here pretty recently, and there were bait fish everywhere. We had like, I think they call them what do they call those? I know we had little pogies, we had bull minnows, and I forgot what they called, rain minnows or something like that. This little clear tiny minnows. I'm sure somebody will giggle at me not getting that one right, but there was bait fish everywhere, and we're throwing flashy swimmer, we're throwing the popping corks with shrimp under them and bait fish presentations. We're getting nothing, and I just built a rod for that presentation and decided to get it out and fish it and just see what the rod felt like. And not very long after I pulled that out, it was fish on, and we started fishing that from lunch until about 4 or 5 o'clock, whenever my trolling motor finally decided to crap the bed on us. And I think we ended up that day with 7 slots, a flounder, a lot of shorts, a lot of dink trout. Matt hooked an alligator. I think it was a good time. It was a good time. But that's my secret lure, man. That's my, like, if you're like, man, I wonder what this guy throws when it gets tough, or like when he's really trying to get on them. That's the lure. That's the presentation. It's my golden egg, I guess, so to say. But use your imagination. The sky's the limit. If there's something out there that you want to do, if there's a presentation or a way you think the fish in your area may want something, that's what I thought, and it's proven to be a killer tactic. It's proven to catch them when they're pressured. So that's what fishing's all about. Fishing's all about personalizing it to your wants, your needs, and your presentation. So as usual, I'll leave you with get out there, get on our Mississippi Gulf Coast, have a good time, be courteous to our fellow anglers and our fellow boaters, and God bless you, and we'll see you next time.